Welcome to the eCommerce Badassery Podcast, the place for scrappy entrepreneurs who want to learn actionable steps and strategies to grow the traffic, sales, and profit in your e-commerce business. I'm your host, Jessica Totillo-Coster, a 20-year retail veteran and former brick-and-mortar boutique owner who spent 3 years as the only employee of a 7-figure online store. That shit was crazy. I know exactly how it feels to do all the things, and I'm sharing everything I learned the hard way so you don't have to. I may have started this business by accident, but supporting badass bosses like you lights me the fuck up, and I am so stoked to see you grow. Are you ready, babe? Let's roll. Welcome back to the eCommerce Badassery Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Totillo-Coster. This is the 6th and final week of our Badass Basics series where we're breaking down the foundational stuff every e-commerce store needs to have in place, whether you're just getting started or you've been at this for years and possibly skipped a few steps along the way. We've walked through your customer's entire journey. The homepage that makes the first impression, the navigation that helps them find what they want, the product pages that turn browsers into buyers, the strategies that grow your average order value, and the trust signals that close the deal. Today, we're talking about what happens after they complete their order. Just because you got the sale, it doesn't mean your job is done. And the strategy I'm talking about today is actually something I discovered sort of by accident. It all started at my previous day job. There was a new product on the market. It was a brand new technology. The industry was raving about it, and it was selling like hotcakes, both in our brick and mortar stores and on our website. The problem was that online, we were getting a shit ton of return requests. When I started researching what was happening, I learned two really important things. First, we were not having this problem in stores. And second, after my customer service team chatted with the customers who wanted to return the item, they were able to identify that it was mostly human error, not an actual problem with the product. Once the customer service agent was able to talk through how to properly use it with the customer, they ended up keeping it. And it made sense why we didn't have this problem in store, because there the customer could play with the tester and there were sales associates to give them all the information they needed to make sure that they had a great experience. I recently came across a TikTok video that illustrated a similar problem with a self-tanning product. The brand released something called a face tanning mist. Apparently, consumers were using it as a mist, but without actually rubbing it into their skin for even distribution. Instead of getting an all-over glow, it looked more like they used an aggressive faux freckle product. When I first came across the video, I immediately thought, well, obviously you were supposed to rub that in, and figured it was a one-off occurrence with this particular person who didn't follow the directions. When I opened the comments, there were a flood of people sharing their own photos of a similar experience. There was even a comment from the brand apologizing for the experience and that they had updated their product packaging to reflect this, but that they would go back to the team to figure out a better solution. When I went to their website to see what information they had on their product pages and the packaging, it seemed like they had taken the product down while they figured things out. Now, of course, there is no way to prevent user error 100%. And it's unfortunate that someone can hop on social media and a bad experience can spread like wildfire, but that doesn't mean there aren't ways to limit this. And this is where the post-purchase education email comes in. This is something I've been teaching for a long time. You may have heard me mention it on the podcast before, but it's not something I hear a lot of other people talking about. And when it comes to a post-purchase education, the first question I usually get is whether or not this is in addition to the standard order confirmation email, and the answer is yes. While the order confirmation email is a highly opened email, it's also something that can be easily ignored because the shopper already knows they placed an order and are expecting that email. If, on the other hand, they get another email from you a day later that says important information about your order, that's going to catch a lot of attention. So I prefer to send this educational email separately. So when it comes to what actually goes in this email, there's one question I want you to ask yourself. What does the customer need to know and understand to have a good experience with your product so they'll come back and leave you a positive review? In the example from my previous day job, it was all about the proper way to utilize the product, which was different from any other similar product they had used in the past. If you know what I used to sell, you know why I'm being so cryptic. For the self-tanner, it would be about the very important step of rubbing the product in for even distribution versus just spraying on the mist as is. Then it's all about how you present the information and how often you send it. This is going to depend highly on the product you sell, how important the information is, and how often they buy from you. The format will also be different for different businesses. For some, it's going to be a quick text email. For others, you're going to need a video. It might even need to be more than one email. You have to think through what makes the most sense for your product and customers. I've implemented this differently for different clients, businesses, and products. For a DIY mix your own nail polish kit, we sent them to a playlist of YouTube videos that were specific to the color of kit they purchased. And the content was dynamic in the same email. So if they bought 2 different color kits in the same transaction, they would get the links for both kits. For a car cleaning brand who sold chemicals and microfiber towels, we actually broke this out into separate flows. For the chemicals, because the information was so important to ensure safe use, we have that educational flow trigger every time they purchase that product. On the microfiber towel care, we only send that the first time they buy. And a lot of times I get questions like, well, this information is already on my website, on an insert in the shipment, or on my product packaging. Well, so did the self-tanner and the product I sold at my previous day job. The point is that customers engage with content differently, and you honestly can't repeat yourself too much when it comes to educating your customers on getting the best experience from your product. I promise you that. Now, the post-purchase education email is the foundation, but it's not the only thing that turns a one-time buyer into a repeat customer. Retention is a longer game. It's about continuing to show up in their inbox with content that's actually useful, not just promotion after promotion. It's about making the second purchase easier than the first, and it's about treating your customers like they're more than just a number to you. We could do a whole series on retention alone, and maybe we will. But for today, just know that the post-purchase education email is your starting point. Get that piece in place, and you're already doing more than most stores ever do. So remember, just because you got the sale, it doesn't mean your job is done. In a lot of ways, it's just getting started. The customer who has a great first experience with your product is the customer who comes back, leaves a positive review, and tells their friends. And they don't blast the poor experience they had all over the internet. And that all starts with making sure they actually know how to use what they bought. So if you've been listening along and tackling one piece at a time in this Badass Basics series, you've already done more than most store owners ever get around to. And if you've been making notes, waiting until you have time to dig in, this is your reminder that you don't have to fix everything all at once. Pick the one that's either been nagging at you, or maybe you don't have anything implemented. This post-purchase education email could be one of them, and just start there. But don't let this series be something that you listen to and then forget about. I really want you to take action on each of these episodes because it'll make a huge difference in your business. All right, friends. Well, that is a wrap on the Badass Basics series. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you on the flip side. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you want to learn more about growing your e-commerce business, get started with my free resource library at ecommercebadassery.com/free stuff and get an invite to the Lounge, my e-commerce marketing membership. When you're ready for one-on-one support, apply to work with me at ecommercebadassery.com/apply. Before you go, would you do me a quick favor? Leave a rating and review and tap that follow button. This pushes me up the chart so I can support more scrappy e-commerce entrepreneurs just like you. I'm on a mission to reach as many as I can, and I could really use your help. Thanks so much in advance. Until next time, e-commerce friend, stay badass.